Who are you rooting for?
Oh, I like Mexico.
Mexico, there you go.
I'm rooting for Senegal.
Senegal, okay.
Meanwhile...
Not in offside position.
So in the latest rendition of America's 250th and the Great Patriotic Vibe Shift, I can report to you that America is now 2-0 in the soccer. That is right. We won today against Australia in the World Cup. This is apparently history. I know nothing about soccer for the record, but I guess this is the first time since 1930 that we have won our first 2 group stage matches at the World Cup. So yes, this is arguably the best U.S. soccer team of this century and maybe all time by far. And it's like a train rolling along. The vibes today were fantastic. Therefore, we must ask the question, what are the political implications of America advancing in the World Cup? And you think I'm joking, but I'm actually not, because going into today, for example, it's worth noting that this game took place in Seattle, Washington. Now, it's no secret to any of our audience, Seattle on most days is an absolute cesspool of drug addicts and crazy, violent Antifa. It is notoriously home to some of the most crazy communists in the entire country. But what happens when patriots take over the city? Well, first and foremost, we literally did have articles out of local Seattle news talking about how Seattle liberals are conflicted on whether we want to actually root for Team USA because Donald Trump's making us feel really bad about our country and blah, 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 and this and that. And what happened instead? Okay, so the stupid, crazy Antifa and leftists stayed home. A bunch of patriots took over Seattle today. It was a great time. And not only did the anti-American seethers, aka the Democrat Party as a whole, get humiliated by the fact we're winning at the soccer ball or whatever that sport is called, but at the same time, I think it's actually a useful illustration of what many of our cities could be if we simply remove the freak show, remove the ghetto-ness and the crime, remove the third world takeover, and just replaced it all with normal American patriots, regular, normal people. Because, for example, you look at Seattle, Washington, on paper, you know, just taking a look at the city itself, it's actually a beautiful place with a very rich heritage and history. I remember being there early in the 2010s before everything went insane. Genuinely one of my favorite cities I've ever been, but there is a conversation to be had about how really the patriot has surrendered the centers of our civilization, the cities we should be able to take pride in, to the absolute worst people. And I would argue today was almost a grand vision, especially the sun coming out in Seattle, which is so rare. It was this great symbol of, hey, this is what our country, this is what even places like Seattle, Washington could be when normal people take over. So, hey, maybe there's a statement to be had in that as well. But yeah, long story short, overall, great vibes. Liberals are literally seething over this. And I'm not making that up. You know, I know it's usually tongue in cheek to say, at the Olympics, at the World Cup, whatever, that the libtards are rooting against America. But now we actually have the proof of them saying it out loud. We even have Democrat congressmen, I kid you not, coming out publicly and stating that they are not rooting for the United States in the World Cup. So another crazy, delusional right-wing conspiracy proven correct, right? Oh, you know, conservatives don't get to own patriotism. Liberals are patriotic too. And then they just come out publicly and say they're not rooting for the United States. Funny to watch. Anyways, though, they were wrong. They lost. Congratulations. Let's get into it. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And with that said, if you think I'm joking or exaggerating, take a look at this article published this morning right before the game out of the Seattle Times that reads, some Seattle soccer fans have mixed sorry, let me read this in a libtard voice, right? Some Seattle soccer fans have mixed feelings about patriotically backing the U.S. team during the FIFA Men's World Cup, given the actions of President Donald Trump. Okay, you know what? I would prefer if you guys were just honest and didn't back your country, because we know that that's how you feel. But anyways, let me read you some snippets from this article because they're quite amusing. Okay, so for example, when Carrie Lefkowitz first heard about the U.S. men's national team and that they were going to play a World Cup game in Seattle, he felt a surge of excitement. Oh, yay, I'm a soccer fan, guys. Okay. The West Seattle marketing consultant, of course he's a marketing consultant, loves how the legendary tournament brings fans from different countries together. Oh, so that's what he appreciates about the World Cup, right? Typical leftist. He cares about the foreign countries, not his own. But anyways, he's followed the U.S. team since '94, blah, blah, blah. But now that the 2026 edition is actually kicking off, including a match Friday between the US and Australia at Seattle Stadium, Lefkowitz is struggling to separate his love for US soccer from his negative feelings about high ticket prices, President Donald Trump's crackdown on immigrants, and Trump's war with Iran, among other things, he said in an interview last month. On one hand, it's hard for the 47-year-old to imagine not watching the World Cup and rooting for the U.S. players who hail from diverse backgrounds and compelling life stories. He wants them to succeed. On the other hand, it's hard for Lefkowitz to imagine enthusiastically cheering against their opponents because he thinks Trump is tarnishing what it means to be American on the global stage. Which is hilarious because I would argue right now, amidst the whole World Cup, the opposite is happening. You are watching a bunch of international tourists realize that global leftist propaganda about America was entirely wrong. But still, nonetheless, okay, he's mad that we don't have USAID anymore. We're not exporting LGBT pride and male circumcisions across the world or something like that. So Trump is tarnishing our image. Okay. It's not how but by the way, okay, because he disagrees with, this is very hilarious to me. He disagrees with the political ideology of the president, okay. Therefore, he's rooting for the other countries to win because he seems to understand that if America miraculously, although look, you have to believe, if we miraculously won the World Cup, that would be like this big Trump patriotic statement across the world, and he doesn't want the rest of the world to be so insulted by us anymore. To which I say, maybe there is some truth in that. That's why I've said to people, we stated this in our first World Cup video, right? That I don't know anything about soccer. I'm going to assume 90% of our audience doesn't either. But in this case, we all need to bandwagon Team USA just because of, all of the crap we've heard over the past year from foreigners and leftists and all this stuff. Oh, America can't host the World Cup. You guys suck. Your culture sucks. And then they're coming here being proven wrong on our 250th. How incredible of a statement would it be? The great patriotic vibe shift again, that America wins the world championship in the sport we don't even care about, right? Like that is, it is true. That is going to be quite the statement. And he's scared about the implications of that, right? America might be too powerful, too unstoppable in the image of a lot of the world. And, that's very antagonistic and bad. But okay, anyways, you basically get the idea. But this is something I'm like not making up, right? We have liberals saying they don't want to root for America in the World Cup because of Trump. I would venture to guess most, not all, but most actual American soccer fans are generally liberal leaning anyway, but I guess we ruined it for them. We ruined their own sport for them. And now we're taking it over, bandwagoning it, not even caring. It's just phenomenal to witness, but it doesn't even stop there. Because, for example, there was a recent basically local news town hall done between Democrat Representative Adriano Espaillat and another Democrat, I'm assuming this is a primary or something going on, by the name of Dariliza Chevalier. Okay, so, very, very interesting names there. But anyways, if to continue on our theme here, that we're not like talking crap about this. A bunch of Democrats actually are just rooting against America. They ask both of these representatives, and keep in mind, they're vying for political office. This is the leadership of the Democrat Party that we're speaking about. It's one thing to say random members of the voter base are behaving in a certain way, but we've heard so much, especially from these like mainline Democrat influencers, the Harry Sisson types of people, of this idea that, oh, Democrats, because basically left wingers are trying to rewrite their image, and you've seen this theme effectively even since Kamala back in 2024, that the Democrats are trying to reclaim the idea of patriotism, right? They're trying to say, oh, it's not just conservatives who are allowed to be patriotic. Here's our vision of liberal patriotism. Remember, they were even waving flags at the Kamala rallies, some of the anti-ICE stuff. We had these NGO activists actually bring in a bunch of American flags and say, hey guys, don't hold the Mexico flag, hold the American flag. That'll look better. Totally forced, obviously. But we've heard that whole sort of rebranding attempt, and I'm sure you've seen that, right? Oh, liberals, I'm Team USA, guys. Yeah, I mean, don't call liberals anti-patriotic. And after all of that attempt at PR and whitewashing who they actually are, here we now have members of the Democrat Party, who I'm not sure if they're naturalized or whatever, but, of probably immigrant origins on some level, second, third generation, whatever, admitting the real stance of the party, which is that, no, our goal is not just to import these hordes of, third world populations, but then secondly, to make sure they have no loyalty to America. And what better way to illustrate that than our own representatives here saying the following? Take a listen and understand, we're now not just talking about random people on the street. We're talking about actual leadership of this political party, the people in charge, the people in elected office. Check it out.
World Cup is here. The first match this weekend at MetLife Stadium taking place in New Jersey, even though some people say it is technically New York. But what do you think will win it all? Who are you rooting for?
Oh, I like Mexico.
Mexico, there you go.
I'm rooting for Senegal.
Senegal, okay.
Yeah, well, so much for the PR campaign, right? That just blew up in smoke, because how many times have we heard Democrats trying to say it's not political to root for Team USA? Liberals are patriotic too. And then actual elected members to office, the literal leaders of their political party go on and say garbage like this. And, first of all, just consider how utterly insane that is, right? So we have members, elected officials in this country who represent in political office the United States of America. They ask you, who are you rooting for on the global stage? And they pick not just the foreign country, but the foreign country likely, I would assume, where their heritage is from, right? Where either they immigrated from, their ancestors, whatever. And then if we talk about, say, the dual loyalty or the anti-American attitudes being propagated by a lot of the people who, let's say, are coming here, and this is a big problem with liberal immigration policy. We're called racist and all these things, and we're told that's not true, right? Oh, they love America, and then here you go. Your supposed leaders, like your shining beacons of what your party's supposed to represent, saying exactly what we've been accusing them of doing. And look, you could say it doesn't matter, it's just sports. But again, I'm going to say, first of all, we're not just talking about random Team Mexico fans in Los Angeles. These are people running for political office. One of them is already elected to political office, first of all. And secondly, this is an excuse I've heard for many years, having grown up in Los Angeles, obviously a lot of Hispanic, culture around, where you have this thing that people are rooting for Team Mexico, El Salvador, whatever it is, over the United States. And the excuse we've heard on that for a long time is that, oh, it's not actually anti-patriotism. It's just that America doesn't care about soccer, so that's why, people are Team Mexico, because American soccer is irrelevant. Okay, you know what? Let's even take that in good faith. Fair enough. Here's the difference, though. It's 2026. We're actually good at soccer right now, believe it or not, right? We're competitive. We have a chance. The World Cup's being hosted in our own country. And notice how, though, those allegiances are not changing. And it would even be really one thing to have a second team, for example. I mean, okay, you want to root for America first, but if they're not playing and Mexico is playing and you're Mexican heritage, okay, you know what, fine. But these Democrats running for political office in the United States couldn't even pretend to just go out and say, oh yeah, I'm Team USA. I'm rooting for my country. And look, my second team is Mexico. That's where my heritage is from. But, this is the country where my citizenship is, where it has given me all the opportunity. Clearly, my ancestors believed America was a better country, which is why they migrated there legally or illegally. Who knows? But clearly, there should be some belief, some inherent gratitude to the United States of America for that, right? But no, that's not the case. Rather, I guess you could say that America to them is just this like economic zone that's designed for them to go work, make money, send the money back to Mexico, for example. We see this all the time. No actual allegiance to this place, basically this like dying empire in their eyes that can be looted for resources, and they're not even grateful for what it is. And that was just on full display. So if I were to be honest, you could say I'm reading too much into this whole clip, but to me, that's actually like utterly revolting. That's just completely disgusting. Okay. Frankly, for a elected official, it should be a denaturalizable offense in my eyes. But nonetheless, that is the Democrat Party admitting who they are, and ladies and gentlemen, it is not Team USA. So all of that in mind, let's talk about Team USA. Because again, today's match is taking place in Seattle, Washington. Seattle is a place that allegedly has all these anti-patriotic, stupid leftists. They're publishing articles about how they're not really enthusiastic to root for America. By the way, we've been told by Europeans and many foreigners too that, oh, American sports have no culture, they're no fun, there's no vibes, the fans are so lame, all this different stuff. And funny how all of that fell apart rather rapidly due to the fact that instead of, for once, Seattle being this den of homeless crazies and Antifa lunatics, the Patriots took over the city. And notice how you realize the potential of how amazing Seattle, Washington as a place actually could be without just the worst people in our entire country running the show. Take a look.
In offside position.
So yeah, just great vibes and a good time all around. I'm not exactly sure the last time Seattle, Washington ever expressed this much patriotism at once, but I would venture to guess it did not take place in my lifetime. But yeah, notice how incredible Seattle can actually be when the streets are just full of normal red-blooded American people, right? Because what is Seattle, Washington on a normal day these days? It's like just this total nightmare, third world country. You have these fentanyl zombies everywhere. Antifa's rioting every other week. But what happened, right? What's happening in Seattle right now? Honestly, the best time to go see Seattle, they've, for political necessity, had to move all of the homeless, crazy addicts, instead of going to an institution or rehab where they belong, but they moved them somewhere out of the city. So actually Pike's Place Market and the city center is safe and enjoyable and clean. And you're realizing how beautiful it actually is without the tents, right? And likewise, according to their own words, the annoying leftists are staying home because they're not enthusiastic. And so now the city streets are empty for literally just the normal Americans, the patriots who want to go watch the soccer ball and have a fantastic time. And you just notice how that vibe shift happens just so immediately quickly. And I really do think it stands as a prime example of, maybe you could almost argue to an extent, you're feeling something of old America. There's almost something nostalgic about watching this, but also what the country could be going forward if we simply did not allow our major urban centers to be taken over by the freak shows who are governing it, as well as the, underclass of, as I said, the fentanyl addicts, homelessness, crime, third world migration, all of these things that are just like generally turning it into a hub of decay. And we have argued many times in the past that urban decay is not something conservatives should gloat about or relish in or think is funny or whatever. Like, I understand the cultural aspect of preferring, say, rural or suburban life over urban life. That's all fine. But at the same time, we should also recognize, if you really are patriotic, we ought to see, look, these are the beacons of our civilization, right? The Declaration of Independence was signed where? Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Imagine that. Like, think about that for a moment. Oh, that absolute cesspool known as Philadelphia was our first impromptu capital. Our founding fathers were there. Our country was born there, and we've let it get to that. Like, that should bring great shame, actually. That should be something we care about. New York City is the icon of America. Like, when most of the world thinks of America, first two cities come to mind. What? New York, LA, maybe Chicago. All of those places have become what now, right? You know, and this is the thing. When history books record what American civilization was and hopefully is till the end of time, but, you know, whatever, right? They're not going to talk, like, think about ancient Rome. You know, was Rome, sure, had plenty of, let's say, rural life in those things, but is ancient Rome defined by the Tuscan countryside, or is it defined by the city they built known as Rome, known as Constantinople, known as these places? This is exactly why, right? Great civilizations in the past have always taken pride in their cities, because a city is basically like a monument to what your civilization is. And when we allow the monuments to our civilization to become these absolute disasters that nobody wants to go into for rightful and understandable reasons, that's actually not a sign of what a healthy civilization is. A healthy America should be a place where, yes, you can go to downtown Seattle, downtown LA, whatever, New York, all these places, and, you know, you feel some sense of pride in your country, not this, oh my gosh, what is going on? You know, you feel like revolted, you feel disgusted. That's actually a huge red flag. And hopefully right now, the scene out of Seattle sort of illustrates that to people, right? A place that we so often view as just total liberal cesspool, you know, this craziness, you know, it's just unlivable on many levels, which it is. But let's also not forget, this is what it could be. It's a naturally beautiful place. As I said, if you went there like decades ago before it went crazy, Seattle, Washington is an incredible city, and Washington State as a whole, a place we ridicule as a far left nightmare. How beautiful actually naturally is that state? And we've surrendered it to the leftists. We've surrendered maybe like some of the most beautiful places in our country to the communists who don't even appreciate it, right? Like, it's actually something problematic, but hey, you know, and hopefully this can be a statement of how incredible a place like Seattle actually can be going forward. So you see all that, you got the vibes, you got American sports fans actually being electric, which we were told by a lot of the anti-American seethers did not exist. That crowd was loud today. And then, of course, you have the game itself. America wins. 2 goals scored. I think it was in the first. What are they even called in soccer? The halves. So 2 goals scored in the first half. The second half, elite goal line defense. Okay, is what I'm gonna call it because I don't even know the term for it. But it was like we had freaking Reuben Foster and Minka Fitzpatrick playing defense back there. It was incredible. You know, Dante Hightower's plugging the A gap, literally. But yeah, so that all went down. We won. It's historic. You have Country Roads playing after the fact, which was cool and all. But I do have to say, as a college football fan, the real true American tradition here would have been everybody storms the field and then we play down under to make fun of Australia and mess with our opponent. But soccer is clearly not cool enough for that. But hey, look, we're gonna lay off the soccer hate for the next month or so because genuinely we all must believe, okay, we can win it all. Let's do this. Oh, that's so delusional. America would never do that. Why are American fans so delusional? Because we're America. As I've explained before, as I explained about the UFC fight, for example, and the dirt bike rally and all the things that the leftists said was disgracing the White House. I mean, what would America be and what would Americans be if it were not for delusional self-abandon? Like, to an extent, that very over-the-top crazy nature that a lot of the world laughs about, but that's actually us, okay? So yes, we're going to be delusionally ambitious because that is a core mental characteristic of this country. It's why Americans charted frontiers and crossed oceans and went to the moon with basically a microwave and aluminum foil. Yeah, Americans are inherently kind of crazy and delusionally stupid. That's the point. That's why we're so smart. Okay, only Americans will understand this. But anyways, so there you have it. Just all around, great time. All right, that said, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.